Psycho.
Maybe you've heard this story before. On a hot July day in 1953, a businessman arrived at the Tokyo International Airport in Japan. The man gave his papers to be examined by border security, and everything seemed to be legitimate and normal. However, upon inspection of his passport, authorities found that the document was issued by a country called Taured. This shouldn't have been an issue as it was a busy international airport, and they were used to sifting through hundreds, if not thousands, of foreign passports per day. The man's passports even had dozens of stamps from other countries he'd visited, including Japan, meaning this was not his first time at that airport. There was just one problem. There was no country called Taured. Intrigued and alarmed, the airport authorities asked the man to point out his country on a map. He pointed to a place called Andorra, and when authorities informed him of this, he grew agitated and insisted that this was not Andorra, but Taured, and that it had existed for over 1,000 years. Unsure of what to do, the border guards placed the man in isolation in a hotel so they could get to the bottom of the situation. But when they went to check on him the next day, he had disappeared. Some believe the story of the man from Taured to just be an urban myth, while others take it as proof that alternate dimensions exist. Nevertheless, there is a true story of a man who came from a fictional country, but it is not a story of time travel or parallel universes. Instead, it is a story of deceit, manipulation, fraud, and death. This is the country that never existed. There is what's known as a dark triad of traits. It is widely believed that the con man or fraudster possesses most, if not all, of these traits, which allows them to be able to charm, deceive, and exploit people to achieve their goals. Gregor MacGregor was born on Christmas Eve, 1786. He would come to have many names, including but not limited to El General MacGregor, the Cazique, and most notably, the Prince of Poyais. In modern terms, some might have called him a con artist, a swindler, a narcissist, and a snake oil salesman. But while he was revered and reviled in equal measure, Gregory's story is a testament of how far some people will go to succeed. At the age of 16, Gregor joined the British Army, where he became lieutenant after only serving a year. He then went on to become captain, a title he didn't earn, but instead bought using his wealthy wife's fortune. This demonstrated his grandiosity and his need for power by any means necessary. From an early age, Gregor had a deep need to be admired and respected, and he didn't care if he had to buy his way to this respect or earn it. In 1810, he was discharged from the army and moved to Edinburgh. His grandiose fantasies and his desire to make something of his name continued to grow and grow. He soon began to refer to himself as Sir Gregor MacGregor, to show how well-connected and important he was. His inflated image, however, was not to last. In 1811, his wife died, leaving him financially stranded. Imagine the blow this would deal to the ego of a man like Gregor, a man for whom image, status, and power was everything. Disgraced and humiliated, Gregor came up with a plan: Latin America. He sold his Scottish estate and set sail for Venezuela, where he began referring to himself as Sir Gregor. He approached General Miranda, who, impressed by his service in the British Army, put him in command of a cavalry battalion. Eventually, Gregor became General of Division in the Army of Venezuela and New Granada, a high and impressive rank for a man who was only 30 at the time. His appetite for success and acclaim knew absolutely no bounds, and soon he would seduce and marry a famous Latin heiress. It seemed that once again he had risen from nothing and achieved his dreams of fame and fortune. Here's where things start getting crazy. It was the year 1820. It was a year that would decide the fate and legacy of the man for the rest of history. By sheer chance, he had come upon a place called the Mosquito Coast, a harsh, virtually uninhabitable swamp off the coast of Nicaragua. Burning with ambition and the desire to build an empire, he bargained with the leader of the indigenous people to give him some land so he could create his own colony. When he returned to Britain in 1821, he started telling investors that he was the royal prince of Poyais, a booming and lush country ripe for colonization. He even published a guidebook, trying to make the inhospitable swamp seem like a legitimate land grab opportunity, and went so far as to create his own fake currency, the Poyais dollar. Investors and settlers were so convinced by his sales pitch that they hopped onto a ship and set sail for the promising land of Poyais. There was just one problem. When they arrived, they found nothing but a hostile jungle that was unfit for much of anything. No livestock, nothing. The settlers tried their best to make the land inhabitable, but eventually they had to turn around, go home. Many of them were in bad shape after trying to survive the harsh wilderness, but those were the lucky ones. According to sources, hundreds were left in financial ruin, and over 150 settlers died. Gregor, in the meantime, was selling his scheme to the French, although he was caught by authorities and his ship seized before it could set sail for the doomed colony. By some odd legal quirk, however, Gregor was acquitted of all charges. For the rest of his life, he carried on with his schemes on British soil, coming up with fraud after fraud, though none as grand and daring as trying to sell a fake country. He passed away in 1845 and is considered by many in Venezuela to be a hero due to his army exploits. Whether you think of him as a hero or a monster, few in history could match the ambition and charisma of a man who sold a whole country. That never existed.